Welcome back to the Endless Learning. As we were going to learn about the higher statistics, but before moving towards the higher statistics, you are supposed to know about what we do in higher statistics, how to test the hypothesis in higher statistics. Before moving towards the higher statistics, let me know about what is this hypothesis and how it is formulated and what are the bases, forms or the types, whatever we will know all about this hypothesis. Hypothesis may be defined in any of the three ways, like the hypothesis is the tentative solution to any problem. We say that it is an intelligent guess about the solution of a problem, or it's a hypothetical statement about the relation of the variables. This type of hypothesis we use in the correlational studies. As by these definitions, it is evident that hypothesis is not the final solution of the problem, but it is the tentative solution of the problem. As everybody says, it's the tentative solution. So to get the final solution, we have to test the hypothesis. For testing the hypothesis, we need the statistical techniques that we will discuss in upcoming video lectures. As we have already discussed about the types of the data, there are two types of the data, that is quantitative and the qualitative data. The testing of the hypothesis is being done in the quantitative data, not in the qualitative data. In case of qualitative data, we don't formulate the hypothesis because it cannot be tested with the help of the statistical technique. So the hypothesis is only formulated in the quantitative data. Remember it. If the qualitative data is being converted into the quantitative data, then we can formulate the hypothesis, which we can test with the help of the statistical techniques. Thus, the formulation of the hypothesis is main and must in the correlational survey researches, or we can say the experimental researches. The researcher cannot state the hypothesis in any form that he/she wishes. There are some bases for formulation of the hypothesis. The base will guide the researcher when to write the null hypothesis or when to write the directional hypothesis. The researcher has a choice to formulate any one of the three types of hypotheses. We will discuss them in the types of hypothesis later on. But there are bases for the formulation of this hypothesis. Here I will discuss about the two major bases of formulation of hypothesis. One of them is the review of related literature. Literature means like the previous studies which are in journals or e-journals, which are in dissertation, in the form of dissertations, or we can say thesis. Before moving forward to this, let me tell you there are two major terms, like first is the review of literature. Review of literature means when we scan the whole literature. Let me suppose that I want to do research in the educational technology and I scan whole literature, I review whole literature about the educational technology. What researches are being done in the educational technology? This review of literature is being done to find out the research gaps. Okay, it's being done before the researcher is having any problem in hand. To find out the problem, we do the research review of literature. And suppose by reviewing the literature in the educational technology, I found out that there is a gap, that is the e-learning is not being researched, that much researched upon. So I took that e-learning as my field of research. And the next term is review of related literature. Here the related term means the area of the research which I have chosen in the previous, in educational technology, that is the e-learning. And when the researcher does review about that particular area, that particular which he has chosen in to research upon, that is known as the review of related literature. I hope you have got the difference between the review of literature and the review of related literature. Simply, review of literature is being done to find out the research gaps and to find out the problems. And review of related literature is being done after we have problem in hand. Let's move forward. Now, this is the first base which I will discuss here, that is the review of related literature. How review of related literature is being the base to formulate the hypothesis, let us see. Let us suppose a researcher wants to take a research related to the online learning. Then the research is conducted related to the online learning will be reviewed by the researcher. While reviewing the researches, the researcher finds that no research has been conducted related to the online learning, and in this situation, when there is no research being conducted, the researcher has to formulate the null hypothesis. On the other hand, when the researcher scans the related literature about the online learning, she finds that a few researches have been conducted on the online learning, but it's difficult to give any direction as the base is not strong. So, in this situation also, the researcher has to frame the null hypothesis. Means when you don't have the strong review base, then the researcher goes with null hypothesis. This is the case when you have no research or little research available. But what if there are large number of researches available? Suppose a researcher wants to research online teaching versus the traditional teaching. In which mode the student's performance is better, whether in online teaching or in traditional teaching. This is the case when we have large number of studies in hand, say we have 7,000 or 8,000 studies in hand. First situation is there might be consistency in the findings, means 7,000 or 8,000 studies found out similar. Suppose that traditional teaching is better than online teaching, and in that case you should not take that research because that is being already researched and there is consistency in the findings. Now, if there is inconsistency in the findings, suppose there is large number of researches where performance of a student in the traditional teaching and the online teaching is being assessed. Suppose the researcher found that 80% of the researchers report that in traditional teaching students' performance is better, and the 5% studies or the 5% researchers report that in online teaching the performance of student is better than in traditional teaching. This is the 85% of the whole studies, but the 15% studies, remaining 15% studies report that both online teaching as well as the traditional or offline teaching were found students were found to perform similar in both this online and offline teaching. And in such situation, the researcher has to formulate the directional hypothesis, and the direction should be which is evident from this 80% of the research. Means the researcher has to say that performance of students in the traditional teaching is better than the online teaching. It's because of this 80% studies are favoring the traditional teaching. There might be another situation where the 40% researchers report that traditional teaching is better and 45% researchers report that online teaching is better. This is also the 85% of the cases, and remaining 15% reported that in both online and traditional teaching the students perform equally well. In this situation, there's no clear direction. 5% is not that big to differentiate between the online and offline teaching. As there is no clear direction, so here the researcher has to form the null hypothesis. So, on the basis of the review of related literature, the researcher will state the null hypothesis only as the base for the direction, or the alternative hypothesis is not strong. And in case the review of related literature indicates some direction, as in the previous example, the hypothesis should be formulated in the directional form only. The direction has to be reflected by this review of related literature. Remember it, it is review of related literature, not by the review of literature. And next we will discuss here about the related theory. We have so many theories in the field of education related to the learning. There are learning theories, there are motivational theories, there are personality theories, there are intelligence theories. A researcher may undertake the research which is based upon some theory. Suppose a researcher wants to study the effect of reward, or we can say reinforcement, on the learning of the mathematics by, let us suppose, class first students. As you might be known that there is a theory regarding this reward or the reinforcement, the Skinner's theory of operant conditioning. This becomes the base for such research, and with the help of this theory, the researcher can formulate the hypothesis. Suppose researcher says a student to solve this mathematical problem. If he solves this mathematical problem, he will be given the toffees. In this case, the child will get the reward, the toffee, or we can say reinforcement to this child to solve this problem is the toffee. And the researcher has to formulate the hypothesis. What will this student do? Because this is based upon the theory, that is the operant conditioning theory, which was given by the Skinner. So the researcher should formulate the directional hypothesis only as the related theory is the base. The hypothesis in the null form cannot be stated here. I hope you have understood the base to form the hypothesis. I have discussed here the two. Let us sum up what we have discussed in this lecture today. Firstly, we have discussed that there are two bases for the formulation of the hypothesis. First is the review of related literature, and in this case I have told you what's difference between the review of literature and the review of related literature. Second, we have discussed the related theory as a base. And we have also discussed in this lecture that there are two forms of hypothesis. One is the null form of hypothesis, in which we negate that there is no relation or no difference between the variables. And second is the directional hypothesis. When we frame the directional hypothesis and null hypothesis, we have discussed this in this lecture. I will end up this lecture by saying this, that you should keep in mind the hypothesis should be stated always in the present form. I hope you have understood this lecture. Don't forget to like this video. Share this video with other students so that whole student community will get benefited from it. If you are new to our channel, click on the subscribe button and press on the bell icon to get the notifications of the new lectures. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for supporting us. God bless you.